9 silent symptoms your heart is asking for help. When people imagine a heart attack, they often picture someone suddenly grabbing their chest and collapsing. While that can happen, it's far from the only way heart problems begin. In many cases, the warning signs are much more subtle. Instead of appearing all at once, they develop gradually, making them easy to overlook or dismiss. Before we continue, it's important to remember that this video is for educational purposes only. It isn't meant to replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you're experiencing symptoms or have concerns about your heart health, please seek guidance from a qualified healthcare professional. In this video, we'll go through 9 warning signs that could suggest your heart is under stress. Many of them seem so common that they're often blamed on being tired, feeling stressed, or simply getting older. However, one of these signs stands out. Many healthcare professionals consider it one of the most important and one of the easiest to miss. We'll save that for the end because understanding it brings the earlier signs into a whole new perspective. Your heart is an incredible organ. Working around the clock without taking a single break, it beats nearly 100,000 times every day, circulating thousands of liters of blood throughout your body. With such an enormous workload, it's only natural that it gives signals when something isn't right. The challenge is that those signals are rarely dramatic. Sometimes it's an unusual level of fatigue that doesn't seem to have a clear cause. Sometimes it's swelling that makes your shoes feel tighter than usual. Other times, it's simply a feeling that something doesn't seem quite right, even if you can't explain why. Each of the signs we'll discuss can have many different causes, and on its own, none necessarily points to a heart problem. But when several of them appear together or become more frequent, they may reveal a pattern that's worth paying attention to. As you watch, don't focus on just one symptom. Instead, consider how these signs might fit together. Recognizing the bigger picture could make all the difference when it comes to understanding what your heart may be trying to tell you. Number 1, unexplained fatigue. Fatigue is such a common complaint that it's often not taken seriously at all. Everyone gets tired from time to time. Work, poor sleep, stress, changes in the season. It's never hard to find a reason. But heart health specialists point to one important detail. If this fatigue doesn't go away with rest, and if it's making even the simplest daily tasks difficult, it could mean something different. When the heart isn't pumping enough blood, the body's tissues and muscles don't get all the oxygen they need. This can show up as a feeling of complete exhaustion. Some people describe it as, quote, like my battery has just died, end quote. Others notice they suddenly find themselves out of breath while climbing stairs or carrying grocery bags, doing things that never used to wear them out before. The story of Margaret, age 62, is instructive here. A retired teacher who loved spending time in the garden with her grandchildren, Margaret noticed within just a few weeks that even her favorite activity was leaving her completely drained. At first, she blamed her age, then the winter cold. But the fatigue didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. When her family finally convinced her to get checked out, doctors discovered that a heart-related issue was behind her exhaustion. Margaret's story is a reminder that the simple phrase, "I'm just tired," can sometimes carry a much deeper message. Of course, not every case of fatigue is heart-related. But if your fatigue is getting worse by the day, if you're struggling to do things that used to come easily, or if it isn't improving no matter how much you rest, it may be worth discussing with a healthcare provider. The most important thing that sets this kind of fatigue apart from ordinary tiredness is how long it lasts. Ordinary fatigue usually improves significantly after a good night's sleep. But fatigue that may be linked to the heart can persist at the same intensity for days or even weeks. When people notice this happening, they often blame themselves first. They think, "I'm just not getting enough rest," or "I've been a little lazy lately." But in reality, this feeling could be the body's way of reflecting a struggle happening deep inside. Number 2, shortness of breath. The second sign often shows up alongside the first one, but it can also appear entirely on its own: shortness of breath. We're not talking about the normal breathlessness that follows an intense run. We're talking about an unexplained tightness in your breathing that shows up while walking on flat ground, climbing stairs, or sometimes even while just sitting still. The mechanism behind this sign is fairly straightforward. When the heart can't pump blood efficiently enough to the rest of the body, fluid can start to build up in the lungs. This can make breathing difficult. Some people notice it most clearly at night, finding it hard to breathe while lying flat, so they start propping themselves up with extra pillows to sleep. Even this small change can be an important clue. Here's the key point to keep in mind. If shortness of breath comes on suddenly and severely, that can be a medical emergency requiring immediate care. But shortness of breath that develops gradually over weeks, increasingly affecting your daily activities, shouldn't be ignored either. The body generally tries to give us early warnings. The challenge is learning to hear them. The story of Helen, a retired music teacher, is striking in this regard. Helen had walked the same route 3 times a week for years, but at some point she noticed she was stopping to rest more often along that same familiar path. At first she blamed the change of seasons, then a mild cold. But as the weeks went by, she found she had to stop and catch her breath even climbing the stairs at home. When her daughter finally convinced her to get checked out, doctors discovered that a heart condition was behind her shortness of breath. Helen's experience shows that small changes in our daily routines can sometimes carry a much bigger meaning. Here's a simple question you can ask yourself when evaluating shortness of breath. Can I still do, just as easily as I could a year ago, something that used to come without any effort? If the answer is no, and there's no other explanation for that change, it may be wise to bring it up with a healthcare provider. Number 3, swelling in the ankles and legs. The third sign might not seem related to the heart at all at first glance. Swelling in the ankles, legs, or sometimes the abdomen. Mild swelling after standing for long periods or during hot weather can be perfectly normal. But if the swelling becomes persistent, gets progressively worse in the evenings, or leaves an indentation when you press on it with your finger, this is known as edema, and it can be a sign worth paying attention to. The reason behind this is fairly simple. When the heart isn't pumping powerfully enough, blood can start to pool and leak out of the blood vessels, especially causing fluid to collect in the legs and feet. As the body fights against gravity, these are the areas most affected. Robert, a 74-year-old retired plumber, noticed his shoes were feeling much tighter by the evenings. At first, he blamed his old shoes, then his salty diet. But a few weeks later, when he noticed the marks from his socks were staying on his legs for hours without fading, his wife took him to see a doctor. That simple observation led to an important health issue being caught early. Swelling on its own doesn't always signal something serious, but if it keeps happening regularly and shows up alongside shortness of breath or fatigue, that combination may be worth discussing with a healthcare provider. Interestingly, this type of swelling tends to become more noticeable later in the day, because standing or sitting throughout the day makes it easier for fluid to collect in the legs. If the swelling is barely noticeable when you wake up in the morning, but becomes clearly worse by evening, that pattern itself can be a meaningful clue. When the body shows a symptom that changes like this throughout the day, it's usually not just a coincidence. Number 4, jaw, neck, or back pain. The fourth sign shows up in a place most people would never expect. Instead of the chest, it's pain or discomfort in the jaw, neck, between the shoulder blades or the back. This is one of the most commonly misunderstood aspects of heart problems, because people tend to associate heart trouble only with chest pain. The nerve pathways in the body are connected in remarkably complex ways. Signals coming from the heart can sometimes reach the brain as though they're coming from a completely different area. This is called referred pain. Because of this, some people mistake what might actually be a heart-related issue for a toothache, a stiff neck, or simple muscle tension. This particular sign tends to show up more often and more vaguely in women. Rather than describing a sharp pain, some women describe it as a mild pressure or a general sense of discomfort. This can make the sign harder to recognize, and it can sometimes delay people from taking action. Patricia, age 58, had been experiencing a recurring jaw ache for several days. She went to her dentist, but no dental problem could be found. Because the pain got worse with exertion and eased with rest, she was eventually referred to a cardiologist. Her story shows how important it can be to notice the pattern of a pain rather than just its location. If pain shows up with a certain level of exertion and goes away with rest, it's worth having that evaluated by a healthcare provider. One of the things that sets this particular sign apart from others is that it's often felt in more than one place at once, rather than in a single spot. Some people first notice a mild ache in the left shoulder, then realize that ache is spreading toward the jaw or the upper back. This spreading sensation is quite different from ordinary muscle tension pain, and it's often described as something deeper and more widespread. The 4 signs we've covered so far have mostly had to do with the body's physical limits, but the sign we're moving to now involves an area many people would never even think to connect: the stomach and digestive system. This connection might sound surprising at first, but once you understand the reasoning behind it, you'll see it actually makes a lot of sense. Number 5, digestive trouble and nausea. The 5th sign is perhaps one of the most frequently misread: nausea, indigestion, or a feeling of discomfort in the abdomen. These symptoms are so often blamed on an upset stomach or eating habits that connecting them to the heart rarely even crosses people's minds. The lower portion of the heart sits quite close to the diaphragm and the stomach. Because of this proximity, some heart-related issues can end up feeling like digestive problems. Some people describe it as, quote, like something I ate just isn't sitting right, end quote, even though what they ate may have nothing to do with it at all. This sign is especially worth paying attention to when it shows up alongside cold sweats, shortness of breath, or a feeling of pressure in the chest. Nausea on its own is usually just about digestion, but when it appears together with these other signs, that combination should be taken seriously. Dorothy, a 60-year-old retired nurse, noticed her stomach felt queasy and she was sweating slightly one evening after dinner. Because she had spent years working in a hospital, she recognized that this particular combination of symptoms appearing together was different from ordinary indigestion. She went straight to the emergency room without wasting any time, and that decision made a critical difference in getting early treatment. Her experience is a good reminder. Evaluating symptoms together, rather than one at a time, can be far more meaningful. This particular sign is reported to appear more often in women. Some researchers point out that women can experience heart-related problems differently than men do, and that this difference can sometimes lead to delayed diagnosis. For that reason, people who experience nausea or indigestion without the classic chest pain are encouraged to pay close attention, especially when the symptom shows up in an unusual way. Number 6, unexplained cold sweats. The 6th sign is completely different from the sweating you'd expect on a hot day or during exercise. A sudden, cold, clammy sweat that appears with no clear reason at all. This type of sweating is usually a sign that the body is under stress, and it's commonly seen in connection with heart problems. When the body senses that the heart isn't pumping enough blood, it can release adrenaline and shift into a kind of alarm state. This can show up as cold sweats, paleness, and sometimes mild trembling. This sign often appears alongside chest pain, shortness of breath, or dizziness, which is why it shouldn't be evaluated on its own. People often describe this sign by saying something like, quote, I just started sweating out of nowhere for no reason, end quote. If this kind of sweating happens while you're at rest, without any physical exertion or rise in temperature, it should be taken seriously, and prompt medical attention is recommended. George, a 63-year-old retired construction engineer, remembers suddenly waking up in a cold sweat one night while watching television. The room temperature was normal, and he hadn't exerted himself in any way. Still, his shirt was nearly soaked through. He wanted to chalk the strange feeling up to a mild flu, but he also felt a slight discomfort in his chest at the same time. When he put the two symptoms together, he decided to go to the emergency room, and according to his doctors, that turned out to be, quote, the right call at the right time, end quote. Number 7, dizziness and a feeling of unsteadiness. The 7th sign is something a lot of people brush off, saying, maybe I haven't had enough water, or maybe my blood sugar dropped. Sudden dizziness, lightheadedness, or a feeling of losing your balance while standing. If these symptoms happen just once, they're usually not a cause for concern, but if they keep happening repeatedly, they may deserve a closer look. When the heart beats irregularly or isn't pumping enough blood flow to the brain can temporarily decrease. This can cause dizziness, blurred vision, or sometimes a feeling close to briefly losing consciousness. Sudden dizziness, especially while standing up or changing position, should be watched closely. William, a 65-year-old retired accountant, noticed his vision starting to go dark a few times right after standing up in the kitchen. At first, he blamed low blood pressure. But when it kept happening, and he nearly lost his balance on one occasion, his family encouraged him to see a cardiologist for an evaluation. Doctors found a small but significant irregularity in his heart rhythm. William's story shows why recurring dizziness should never be brushed aside. It's worth making an important distinction here. Everyone experiences mild dizziness now and then. Dehydration, going too long without eating, or moving too quickly are all common causes. But if this feeling keeps happening repeatedly, especially while at rest, or if it shows up together with any discomfort in the chest, that combination should be evaluated by a healthcare provider. Number 8, heart palpitations and irregular heartbeat. The 8th sign is a signal that comes straight from the heart itself, a feeling of palpitations or sensing that your heart is beating irregularly. Some people describe it as the heart, quote, skipping a beat, end quote, or suddenly racing. Sometimes this feeling lasts just a few seconds, and sometimes it can go on for several minutes. Stress, caffeine, and lack of sleep can all trigger palpitations from time to time, so not every episode is cause for alarm. But if this feeling keeps happening often, if it occurs even while you're at rest, or if it shows up alongside symptoms like dizziness or shortness of breath, it could be a sign of an issue with the heart's electrical rhythm. The heart's rhythm is controlled by one of the most delicate electrical systems in the entire body. Even a small disruption in this system can create a palpitation sensation that's noticeable in daily life. For this reason, recurring and unexplained palpitations are among the signs worth discussing with a healthcare provider. Susan, a 69-year-old retired librarian, noticed her heart would suddenly race while she was reading in the evenings, and then seemed to, quote, skip, end quote, right afterward. The feeling would last only a few seconds before going away on its own. She ignored it for months because she otherwise felt fine. But one day, when the feeling showed up together with dizziness, she realized she needed to take it seriously. After being evaluated, doctors found an irregularity in her heart's rhythm, and because it was caught early, they were able to get it under control. Susan's story shows that the feelings we tend to dismiss as unimportant are sometimes exactly the signals we most need to listen to. Number 9, a sense of impending doom. And now we've arrived at the 9th sign we mentioned at the beginning of the video, the one that's perhaps the most overlooked of all. Doctors sometimes call it, quote, a feeling that something bad is about to happen, end quote, or, quote, unexplained anxiety, end quote. It's a sign that's been noted in medical literature for years, yet it remains largely unknown to the general public. Some patients describe experiencing a deep sense of unease, anxiety, or the feeling that, quote, something is wrong, end quote, shortly before a serious heart-related event with no logical explanation for it. It can feel similar to a panic attack, but unlike a panic attack, it usually has no clear trigger. The person simply senses, deep down, that something isn't right. The exact mechanism behind this sign isn't fully understood, but many experts believe it may be connected to the body's stress response, with the nervous system picking up early signals from the heart. The body may be expressing physical changes that haven't yet become consciously noticeable as a kind of emotional unease instead. Frank, a 55-year-old retired police officer, felt a deep sense of unease one evening for no apparent reason. He told his family, quote, "I just feel strange tonight," end quote, but he couldn't explain why. A few hours later, he started to feel mild pressure in his chest, and when he put those two symptoms together, he decided without hesitation to go to the emergency room. He later learned that this gut feeling had been his body's way of giving him an early warning. This sign, of course, isn't a diagnostic tool on its own. We all experience unexplained anxiety from time to time, and most of the time it has nothing to do with the heart. But when this feeling shows up together with other signs, like chest pressure, shortness of breath, or cold sweats, taking the body's signal seriously can be life-saving. We've covered 9 possible warning signs today: unusual fatigue, shortness of breath, swelling in the legs or feet, pain in the jaw or back, digestive discomfort, cold sweats, dizziness, heart palpitations, and finally, that unsettling feeling that something just isn't right. On their own, none of these symptoms automatically means you're having a heart problem. Many of them can be caused by completely different conditions. But doctors consistently remind us of one important fact: our bodies often give us subtle clues before a serious heart event occurs. The challenge isn't whether those clues exist, it's whether we recognize them and take them seriously. If there's one lesson that connects all the stories we've shared, it's this: almost no one assumes the worst when the first symptom appears. Most people brush it off. They blame stress, lack of sleep, getting older, or simply having a busy week. It's only when the symptoms continue or begin to add up that they realize something may be wrong. That's exactly why we made this video. Not to create fear, but to encourage awareness. Paying attention to your body, noticing changes, and knowing when something feels different can be one of the simplest and most valuable ways to protect your health. The good news is that many heart conditions can be treated much more successfully when they're detected early. That's why those quiet warning signs matter. As we mentioned at the beginning of this video, many serious heart-related events don't happen without warning. In many cases, the body has been sending signals for weeks or even months beforehand. Learning to recognize those signals could make all the difference. Your heart rarely raises an alarm with a dramatic moment. More often, it speaks quietly, one small symptom at a time. Learning to listen to those whispers is one of the greatest investments you can make in your own health and in the well-being of the people you love. If today's video helped you see these signs in a new way, we hope you'll remember them. You never know when this knowledge could help you, a family member, or a friend recognize that it's time to seek medical advice. Have you ever experienced any of these symptoms or seen them in someone close to you? Which one surprised you the most? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your experience could help someone else who may be going through the same thing. If you found this video helpful, consider sharing it with someone you care about. A single share could encourage someone to recognize an important warning sign before it's too late. And if you'd like more videos focused on health, prevention, and living well, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, take care of yourself, and most importantly, take care of your heart.